All right, so this is a complete pelvis, all right? And you're gonna need to know the difference between the male and the female pelvis. So I'm gonna, point out some of those differences. The pelvis is composed of the two os coxae, right? So these two bones. The sacrum, which is right here, and then the coccyx, which quite honestly on our model here is missing. It would be down here, the tailbone. Okay. So this one that I have in my hand right now is a female pelvis. Okay. Female pelvis is different from the male pelvis because the female pelvis has to be able to accommodate childbirth. And so overall, the female pelvis is going to be wider and lighter. Okay, the bones are not as heavy. And when we say wider, we're talking about, if you go iliac crest to iliac crest here, okay, this is very wide. And when we look at the male pelvis, you're going to see the difference. Okay. Another important feature, especially for childbirth, is what we call the pelvic outlet. Is rounder and it's wider. So if you remember, I talked about the arcuate line, which is right here. So this is what makes up part of what we call the rim of the pelvic outlet, okay? So this hole right here is the pelvic outlet. And when I kind of tip it towards you, you can see that it's very round and it's pretty wide. Remember, the baby's head has to go through here during childbirth. Another thing that you'll see that is different on the female pelvis is what we call the pubic angle. So the pubic angle is the angle between the two pubic bones. Here's our pubic symphysis on both of our pubic bones with the little piece of fibrocartilage in between there. And so this on the female is greater than 90 degrees. Okay. So those are at least 3 or 4 of the differences between the male and the female pelvis. Now let me pull the male pelvis in here so you can see how it is relatively different. All right, so here's our male pelvis, okay? So the iliac crests in the male pelvis sit up higher, okay? Now remember I talked about that pelvic outlet and how it's much rounder and wider in the female. So if you look into this male pelvic outlet, you see it's definitely narrower. The other thing you're gonna see is that a lot of bony features sort of point inward on the male pelvis. This is the coccyx, these are the ischial spines. And so, even the sacrum kind of bends in a little bit. So it would be clearly difficult for a baby to get their head through this because the opening is not very open. It's not very wide and round, right? And then when we look at that pubic angle between the two pubic bones, right here, very narrow on the male, less than 90 degrees. Okay, so make sure that you can name some differences between the male and the female pelvis.